Hey there, my name is Antonio and welcome to the newest video on my channel. In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to create an amazing Discord clone where users will be able to create their very own servers just like this. So after the image has been uploaded, I'm going to click create and there we go. Just like that, I've created my very own Code with Antonio Discord clone server. In order to invite users, all I have to do is click on invite people and copy this invite URL. Now, the other user has to paste that inside of their browser, just like this, and in a couple of seconds you're going to see that this user is now part of Code with Antonio server. Now let me demonstrate to you how these users can talk in real time inside of this general channel using WebSockets. So I'm going to write hello there, like this. And this message is immediately transmitted back to me here and also to all other users in the general channel. And these users can also answer, just like this. As an admin, I can delete any message on the server in real time. So once I press delete right here and confirm this, you can see that now it says this message has been deleted, and same is true for the other user. The owner of the message can also edit the message. So instead of hello there, let's say this is edited like this. So I'm going to click save and there we go. Now it says this is edited. Besides sending text messages, users can also upload attachments like PDF files and images. So I just uploaded my PDF file in the upload thing. I'm going to click send and in real time the other user received a PDF file. And same is true for sending an image from Unsplash, for example. Once I click upload and upload thing does its thing, we can go ahead and click send like this. And there we go, the other user has received this new message right here. Besides text channels, users can also communicate in video channels. So I'm going to create a new channel and I'm going to call it daily like this, and channel type is going to be video. I'm going to click create and there we go. Now the daily channel exists. I'm gonna go ahead and join this daily channel, and in a couple of seconds you're gonna see me on the camera all alone in this daily channel. So I'm gonna go to the other user and I'm gonna join this newly created channel, and there we go. Now there is two of us. In this daily video channel, we can share screen, we can mute ourselves, we can change our camera, and we can also chat if needed. Great! Besides video channels, we also have audio channels, which are very similar, but they do not show your camera on by default. One cool thing I want to show you is how easy it is to leave a video call. So just like that, I just press on another channel and there we go. I'm outside of this video channel here. Now let's say that I want to find one specific channel or one specific member inside of a server which has a lot of channels like this, so even more than this. One cool thing that I can do is I can just go ahead and press a shortcut command key and I can search for a specific member and I can initiate a one-on-one conversation with this member inside of this channel. So I just switched my server right here. So I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to go back inside of this old server and you can either use the shortcut command key or you can press the search button here. I'm gonna find the user that I need and there we go. Now we are inside of our one-on-one conversation. So I'm gonna say hello, this is a private conversation inside a different server like this, and this message is immediately transmitted to the other user. And that is not all. Inside of this individual one-on-one conversation, we can also initiate a video call again. As you can see, now I am alone in this one-on-one conversation, but once the other user decides to join, there we go, there's two of us again. And once we are done, all we have to do is click end video call right here. And one more thing I want to show you is how easy it is to manage members inside of these applications. So I'm going to go back inside of my Code with Antonio right here. I'm going to end the video call here as well. I'm going back to Code with Antonio with the other user. And as you can see right now, I can manage members as an admin. So I can either kick this other user or I can give him a moderator badge like this. So now as you can see, it says that this user is a moderator. What this means is that this other user now has this little shield icon, which when hovered says moderator. And one more thing that this user can now do is, same as admin, this user can delete other people's messages if he deems them inappropriate. So an admin sent this image, but it doesn't matter since we are on moderator. We created a functionality where they can delete anyone's message. So just like that, this message has been deleted. Alongside deleting other people's messages, moderators can also create channels. So I'm gonna go and create an audio channel like this. I'm going to select the type audio and I am going to click create. And just like that, we have a new audio channel right here. And as you can see, the camera is off by default. And the person who created this channel, as well as the admin and other moderators, can always edit the name, for example, voice channel like this. And now it's immediately reflected here. And of course, they can completely remove the channel if it's no longer used. And one more thing I want to show you is that this application is going to have infinite loading using React 10-stack query. So we are not going to load all images at once. Instead, when we scroll up, you can see how they loaded another batch. So this way we're going to optimize our application. I think this is a really, really cool project. I think it has a bunch of amazing features. As you can see right here in this corner, it says live real-time updates. What that means is that our WebSocket server is successfully connected. In case it fails, we're gonna change this color to orange and it's going to say polling, because we're going to have a fallback. So even if something goes wrong, our users can have a great experience on this application. And of course, besides having dark mode, we also have a fully working light mode, which you already saw from this other user right here. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's get started and let's configure our Next 13 application. So here on the left side, I have my Visual Studio Code and I have opened a terminal where I'm going to run my initial commands. And here on the right side, I've prepared the ShadCN UI documentation. So you can either go to ui.shadcn.com or you can just Google ShadCN UI. So this is going to be the component library which we're going to use alongside our Next 13 framework, and we're going to style the entire application with this beautiful component library. So go ahead and head into the documentation right here and select the installation option right here. Now you're prompted to select your framework. So as I've just mentioned a few times, go ahead and select next.js. And here you have simple steps in order to configure that. So let's go ahead and let's run this first command together. So npx create -next-app at latest. And now what you have to do is give your project a name. So for me, it's going to be discord-clone like this. So npx create-next-app at latest is not tied to ShadCN UI. It's tied to the official Next 13 documentation. But since I want my Next 13 to be powered by ShadCN design library, that's why I'm following this documentation right here. So this is going to set up the latest version of Next 13 inside of this folder, Discord clone. And once you've done that, what we have to do is we have to give it some flags to specify how we want our application to be configured. So the first thing I want to use is TypeScript. So I'm going to write --TypeScript like this, and --tailwind and --slint like that. Go ahead and press enter. Since we're using the @latest sign for this create-next-app, it's going to check if we have installed the latest version of Next 13. If we don't, it's going to prompt us with this little question right here. So feel free to just type the Y and enter, or just press enter. Great. Now we have to answer these questions right here. So for the source directory, I am going to select no. For the app router, I'm going to select yes, and make sure you select yes as well. To customize the import alias, you can leave the no as an answer and just wait for this to be installed. After this has been installed, you're going to see this success message right here, and you're going to see where it created your project. So I have a project named discord-clone at this location right here. And all I have to do now is click on open, or find any other way to find your folder. So there we go, discord-clone, that's the new project that I just created. So go ahead and open that. If you get this prompt, you can just press yes, I trust the authors, like this. And there we go. Now we have the structure of our Next 13 application using the app router. So what's important here is that you have the app folder right here. This was created when we selected the app router option. It's important that you have the Tailwind config. So this is created when we added the --tailwind instruction. And it's important that you have the TS config right here that is appended when we added the --TypeScript option. Great. Now before we run this project, I want to run another command in my terminal. So make sure you've opened this in your Visual Studio Code and go back inside of your terminal right here. And it should say that you are inside of this Discord clone. So just make sure that that is true. What we have to do now is run the second step right here, which is running the shatcn CLI or command line interface. So let's run npx shatcn-ui at latest init like this. So a very simple command. And now we're going to get prompted with these questions right here, which are going to configure our new file components.json. So it's asking us whether we want to use TypeScript. And since we initialized our project with TypeScript, it makes sense that our shatcn components are also using TypeScript. So select yes for that. For the style, I would highly recommend that you keep it to default because depending on which style you choose, you're going to have different icons to work with. And I'm going to work with Lucid icons, which are going to be installed by default if I select this default option. If you choose New York, you're going to have a bit of a different styling. You can, of course, explore that in this shatcn UI documentation to see how it looks, and it's gonna look pretty similar, but you're gonna work with different icons and it's not gonna come with Lucid React installed. So I highly recommend that you leave it on default and press enter. And if you're wondering how I am choosing between this option, I'm using the arrow keys on my keyboard. So make sure you select the default option like this. And for this, you can pretty much choose whatever you want, but if you want your project to look as similar to mine as possible, I recommend you choose the stone option. So this is one of the gray Tailwind colors right here. So slate is gray, gray is gray, seeing all of these look grayish and have a black color as well, but stone is the one that fits me best for my Discord project. So that's why I'm going to select stone here and press enter. And everything here, you can just press enter for the global file. You can press yes for the CSS variables. This is the correct location of our Tailwind file. You can leave the alias for components. You can leave the alias for utils as well. It's asking us whether we are using React server components. So the answer for this is yes, and that is because we selected the app router when we initialized our Next 13. So when we use the app router, that means that we are going to be working with server components. So make sure you select yes here as well. And now we just have to confirm all of these questions. So just type Y again, and there we go. It's going to write components.json and it's going to initialize shatcn UI. And now you see right here that you have a new file, components.json right here. And just make sure that it is, well, it doesn't have to be exactly the same as mine if you made some configurations, but it should be pretty similar right here. So I'm using React Server Components, I'm using TypeScript, my base color is stone, and I'm using CSS variables like this. My components alias is @/components, and my utils alias is @/lib/utils. Great, now that we have that, we can finally go ahead and run our application. So go back inside of your terminal right here, and just run npm run dev, and your application is going to start at localhost 3000. So let's go ahead into this localhost 3000 and let's see what we have. And there we go. Yours is probably looking something like this because I am zoomed in, so it loaded the mobile mode right here. Great. So you've successfully set up the Next 13 application and you've successfully set up the shatcn UI library. So what I want to do now is just clean this up a little bit because we don't need all of these things right here. So first thing I want to do is I want to go inside of my app folder and I want to go inside of globals.css right here. So shatcn UI and the Tailwind configuration flag added this styling for us. And we can leave this exactly as it is. We don't have to delete anything here. We're going to need all of this. And one thing I want to add here is a rule for HTML, body, and root like this, and give it a height of 100% like this. Great. Now that we've figured that out, let's go ahead and let's close everything. Let's go back inside of our app folder right here, and let's go inside of page.tsx. So page.tsx is what you're seeing right here. So this Next.js logo, this getting started, this Versal logo, all of these things. And we're not going to need any of that for our initial page. So you can go inside of this app, page.tsx right here, and you can remove everything inside of this return function right here. So I'm going to select everything from the start of this main element right here, and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom like this, and I'm going to remove it. And you can replace that with just a small paragraph, for example, saying hello Discord clone, like this. And there we go, we have a small text right here, and let's test if our Tailwind is working. So we're going to use some Tailwind classes here. So give this an attribute of class name like this, and let's give it a text-3xl like this. There we go. Now our font is much larger. Let's try font-bold like this, and let's try text-indigo-500 like this. There we go. So if your colors are working, if your bold font is working, and your text size is working, you've set up everything correctly. Now, one thing I just want to mention to you is you've probably noticed that I have this cool thing where when I hover over my classes, I can see how they look in pure CSS. And I also have this cool color indicator, and I also have some autocomplete. If you're wondering what that is and how do you get that, you have to go inside of your extensions and type in Tailwind right here and just select the first options. So it's this Tailwind CSS IntelliSense, and just install that if you want to have your classes more readable and have some helpers around Tailwind. Great. You can now remove this import image from next image. We're not going to need it here. You can leave this home function as it is. And before we move on to our folder structure for the application, one thing I want to do is just show you how ShadCN UI library works. So there is a reason that I chose this library. First one is because it's based on Tailwind and Radix, which work great in server components. But the second one is because this is a copy and paste component library. So we are only going to add components that we are actually using here. So what you can do is go inside of your components right here, and here in this sidebar you're going to have every single component available in this project. And one we are definitely going to need is the button component. So let's go ahead and let's add this one immediately. So there are many ways you can add this to your project. You can use the command line interface, which is by far the simplest way to do that, and I would say the correct way to do that, especially because of the component.json file which we initialized. So this command line interface is going to read this components.json file and read our base color, read our CSS variables, read our TypeScript settings and our React server component settings, so it knows how to copy and paste this component inside of our application. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to close everything for now. I'm going back inside of my terminal here. I'm just going to open a new one, pressing here. So now I have two terminals. One is running my application and the other one is going to add this button. So what I have to run is this command right here, npx ShadCN UI latest add button. So npx ShadCN-UI add latest add button like this. And let me just expand this so you can see it in one line like this. And let's just press enter. After you've pressed enter, you're gonna get prompted to confirm this decision. Just press Y, and there we go. It is installing just the button, so nothing else. And now you can exit out of this terminal and just leave this one running your application here. And what you're going to notice now is that inside of your components folder, you have a new folder called the UI, and inside of that you have a button.tsx. And this is what you get. you have a fully customized button component for you, following the best practices, following the accessibility methods, following every single thing that you would need for a high quality button component. So this is why I really like Shadcn UI, because I have access to every single line of code inside of this button. I don't have to guess what's working inside. I don't have to look inside of my node modules and read types. Everything is written right here. If I'm not satisfied by the rounding or by padding, I can change it manually here to fit to my likings. If I don't like the variants, if I don't want to call it default but initial, nothing is stopping me from renaming this default to initial. So let me just show you very quickly. Let's go back inside of our app folder, inside of page.tsx right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this thing in a div like this. Let's just play around with flex. So I'm going to give this a class name of flex, and by default flex is now in a row order. So let's give it a instruction flex-call. So now it's going to align our items in a column below one another like this. So make sure you save your files in Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code does not auto-save files except if you change that settings, but by default it doesn't do that. What we can do now is we can use that button component from add/components UI button. I can see that I have this autocomplete right here. So I'm just going to press here like that, and I'm going to write click me like this. And there we go. Now we have this beautiful button right here. And let me just actually just remove this class. There we go. So I just removed this class because I want to show you how it looks in its normal width, not its full width inside of Flex. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. So that's how easy it was for us to add this button, which has all the effects needed. You can see it has the hover state. You can see it has the focus state. So everything we need regarding accessibility and the fully functioning button. Great. And now we can play around, and you can give this a variant, for example, of destructive ghost link. So if you choose destructive, it's going to become red right here. You can give it a ghost value like this. And now you can see how it's, well, ghostly, right? And you can also extend it with your own class name. So VG Indigo 500, for example, there we go. So you can also do that if you need a one-off example that isn't in your variant. But one cool thing you can do is go back inside of your components UI button.tsx. So to be honest, you never have to modify anything inside of here. But if you really want to play around with it, after this link variant right here, you can feel free to add, I don't know, test, for example, BG-indigo-500 like this. So just like that, I created a custom variant for my button. And what I can do now is go back inside of my page.tsx and look at this. Now, when I try and select my variant, test is recommended to me because it exists, right? And if I save, there we go. I just created my very own variant. Of course, we don't need that. So I'm just going to remove this test right here and leave the link. There we go. And now you can see I have an error because test no longer exists. So that is why I chose to use Shadcn UI. It's fully customizable. We can modify it to any project. That's why I've been using Shadcn UI for both my e-commerce, for my Discord clone, for everything I need, right? Great. You've successfully set up your Next 13 application. You've added Shadcn UI. You've explored how Shadcn UI adds your components. Great job so far. And before we move on to the folder structure, I just want to explain this lib folder right here, which was also added by Shadcn UI. And inside of these utils, you're going to see this cn function. So this cn function is going to be very useful both inside of Shadcn components. You can see that it uses them right here. You can see this CN library is imported from this file right here, but we are also going to use it inside of our pages and our custom components. So this CN util is a very nice util, which is going to help us create dynamic classes inside Tailwind. Why do I say that we need a util for that? Why do we need both CLSX and Tailwind merge? Well, because there are cases where we could create conflicting classes, and instead of writing our own complicated util to decide which one should be prioritized, we have this nice little util which is going to help us. And I just want to quickly show you how to use that. So let's go back to our button here and let's create a variable here, constant state is equal to true, like this. And let's give this a class name like this, and let's open curly brackets and let's import cn from s/lib utils. Let's go ahead and open this. And what you can do here is in the first parameter, you can give it a default value of, let's say, bg-indigo-500. So this is like giving a normal class name. But in the second parameter, you can do state and bg red. So if this variable is true, it's going to become red. So you can see how this overrided this. So that's why we're using this cn class. Now this doesn't make too much sense because this state is hard coded to be true. But think if this was some Axios call, you know, we got something, I don't know, and then we assign that value here, and depending on that we want to change our color. That's why this is useful for those dynamic cases. Of course you can remove all of that, we're not going to need that. Just like this, so just have a plain little button. Great. I hope you understood what we did so far. You can of course explore your documentation right here, find out a bit more about how ShadCN works. And what we're gonna do next is we're gonna go ahead and organize our folders so we can start building our Discord clone. So what I want to do now is I want to add a specific font for my website to use, and I also want to explore a bit how routing works in Next13. So let's go inside of our app folder inside of layout.tsx right here, and let's replace this inter font that our website is currently using. So I'm going to change this import from next/font/google to not use inter but open_sans like this, and then I'm going to replace this function right here like that. There we go. And once I save, you can see that my font has changed slightly. And I think it's also fair that we can replace this constant inter with font like this and just replace it here as well. So font.classname is now using Open Sans. And you can use this metadata to change the title of your browser tab. So now it says create next app, but if I go ahead and change it to Team Chat Application, it's gonna say Team Chat Application. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's explore how routing works. So our page.tsx file is equivalent to our localhost 3000, so no additional routes. In order to create a new route, you have to create a new folder, and let's name this test like this. And inside of that new folder, create another page.tsx like this. And inside, I'm going to use a code snippet sfc, and I'm going to press tab. Now, you probably don't have this, and you're going to see me type this a lot of times in this project. So what that is called is simple React snippets. So you can just go ahead and install this simple React snippets, and then you're going to have the very same thing that I have. Great. So now that I added this, so sfc, I press tab, and I can now name this test page like this. I'm going to go ahead inside of this return function, and I'm going to write div test page like this. So where is this test page visible now? Well, if our page.tsx is at our root of our website, that means that /test should lead to our test page, and that is true right here. Great. But one cool thing that you can do is you can also create organizational folders. So you just notice that every folder we create is obviously going to be mapped to a route. But what if I just want to create a folder that has no effect on the URL and it's purely organizational? Well, for that, we can use organizational folders, and the way they are written is using brackets like this. So I'm just going to go ahead and write auth, for example. So let's say that this is going to be our organizational folder for our sign in, register, and login routes, right? And inside of that, I can go ahead and create a new folder called login, for example. And inside, I can create a new file, page.tsx, like this. And I'm going to use again my code snippet sfc and name this login page like this, and write a div login page There we go. And now, well, our URL is currently /test. That's because we have this folder test. So how do we access this login page? Well, as I just mentioned, this auth inside brackets has no effect on the URL. It's purely organizational, meaning that all I have to do to access the login route is go to /login. So you might be wondering, well, why did I even create this organizational route? What's the point? Why not just use a normal login folder in the app folder? Well, if you have a lot of routes in your application, it is very useful to organize them in folders like this. But these organizational folders also have one cool thing you can do. You can create a custom layout inside. So let me show you. So I'm going to create a new file inside, not inside of the login folder, but inside of this auth folder. I'm going to create a new file called layout.tsx, and you're gonna get an error now because there are no exports in this layout.tsx. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to write auth layout like this, and go ahead and extract children from the props and make sure you give them a type of children react.react node. And in the return function, all I'm gonna do is create a div. I'm going to render the children like this. There we go. The error is gone and nothing has changed yet. But what I can do is I can give it a class name of bg-red-500 like this, and let's give it an h-full as well. And there we go. So now if I go back to /test, you can see that there is no red background, but our login has a red background. And you can go ahead and create a new folder inside of this auth. Let's call it register, for example. Let's create another page.tsx inside. Let's call it register page, and just a div register like this. So this is all just mock. We're not going to write any login functionality right now. And now if I go to either /register or /login, you can see that both of them have a red layout. So that's a cool thing about these organizational routes. If you want a couple of your routes to hold the same sidebar or the same color or the same alignment, you can create a layout in their organizational folder just like this. And we're going to need this because we're going to have many different routes. Some are going to need to have a sidebar like our server sidebar. Some are going to need to have a sidebar for our channels, and some of them, like our invite page, are not going to need any sidebar at all. Same thing for our authentication. So that's why we're going to use these auth folders. And one cool thing that I like to do around here is separate my routes inside of organizational folder using another organizational folder. So I'm going to close everything to make this simpler right here. So inside of my auth folder, I'm going to create a new folder in brackets routes like this, and I'm going to select both login and register, and I'm going to drag and drop them inside routes like this, just like this. And I don't know if this has happened to you as well, but if it did, what this is our hot reload cache is now unsaved because we dragged an active route into a completely different place. And you can see that I have this very weird file that has opened right now. All you have to do is save this file. And if you think you did this wrong, you don't have to worry. The fix for this is very simple. So this is just a cache in hot reload. So let's say you did something wrong and don't know how to fix it. All you have to do is shut down your application and run rm/rf.next, or you can manually just right click and delete your next folder, but make sure .next folder, but make sure you just shut down your application first. And you can see now I don't have that .next folder, but if I run the application again, it's going to be automatically created. So I don't even know if that happened to you, but often when I play around with these routes and move them around like that, that happens. So I just showed you a very quick way to fix that if it even happens to you. Great. So now you can see how I feel like this is a bit of a better structure. So I have an organizational folder called auth, I have a layout, and I have a separated folder for all the routes that I'm going to use inside. Great job. And now I'm going to remove this test page because I no longer need it. And I'm going to do something else here. So I don't like that this page.tsx is just sitting around in this app folder. Instead, I'm going to create an organizational folder main like this, and I'm gonna drag and drop page.tsx inside like this. There we go. And you might be wondering, well, what changed now? Well, absolutely nothing. You can see that our localhost 3000/ is still aiming at this page.tsx. And you might be wondering, well, how? It's in the main folder. Well, that is because our main folder is an organizational folder, meaning that it's not affecting our URL. And let's move this one step further by creating a new route like this and drag and drop page inside of that as well. And there we go. Now again, I have this next cache unsaved file. So all I do is go inside of that file, save the file and close it and collapse everything. That's it. Or if you think you've messed it up or it's not clear to you what you have to do, you can always go ahead and delete the next folder like this. And now the application is not you're gonna get this error like here. So just make sure you shut down your application and just run it again. You don't have to worry. So this is just cache, nothing scary about cache here. Great. Now that I have that set up, I'm just gonna go ahead and prepare, and I'm gonna go inside of this page.tsx inside of our main folder, and I'm gonna replace everything inside, and I'm going to write this is a protected route right here, and I'm gonna remove this import for the button like this. So now it says that this is a protected route, meaning that I only want logged in users to be able to access this main routes page.tsx right here. But in the out, I'm completely fine with people accessing page and register right here. Great, so what I've prepared right now is an actual folder structure for our authentication, which we're going to add in the following part. So let me just quickly recap what we've done. We've moved our page.tsx inside of our organizational main folder inside of our organizational routes folder. So let me just clear this up. You don't need this routes folder, right? This is just a syntax sugar that I like to use to separate my routes from my layout, or if maybe I'm gonna have components inside of this main folder. So that's why I like to keep routes separated, same way I did here. So you can see that layout is clearly separated from my routes. And now I know that this layout is affecting all of things inside of this routes folder right here. So I think that's kind of a good practice to do. You can of course choose your own, but for this tutorial, I suggest that you follow exactly the way I do so you don't have many problems. Great job. So in the following part, we're gonna go ahead and set up authentication. Now let's set up our authentication. But before we do that, I just want to make one important thing here. So we're gonna go ahead and go inside of our .gitignore file right here. So find your .gitignore and scroll all the way down to .environment local and just add your own .environment inside as well, because we're gonna use a .environment file in order to set up our clerks. So it's important that you add this before you create your .environment file. So you never want to commit your environment keys because other people can abuse them if your repository is public. Great, so now that you've set this up in your .gitignore, what you're gonna do is I'm gonna collapse everything and let's go inside of our browser and let's go to clerk.com. So you can either Google clerk authentication, you can use the link in the description, or you can go to clerk.com. And what you have to do here is you have to go ahead and either sign up or sign in. So I already have an account and I'm gonna go ahead and log in with Google. Great, so once you're signed in, you either click create a new application, or if this is your first time, you're gonna see a screen just like this. So I'm gonna zoom in just so you can see what I'm writing here. So go ahead and name your application. For me, it's gonna be Discord-clone like this. And you can go ahead and activate as many of these great providers that Clerk offers you. So I'm just gonna leave email address and Google, but you can activate Facebook, Apple, GitHub, Microsoft, whatever you want here. You can even do some Web3 with MetaMask right here. But I'm gonna leave it at email address and Google. You can do whatever you want. It's not gonna matter, but just leave Google and email address because it's easy and fast to log in. Great, so make sure you've named your application and click create application right here. So I'm going to expand this right now, and there we go. Now you have this quick start right here pre-selected with Next.js. If for any reason it's not pre-selected, just click on Next.js right here. And now it says to paste these keys in your .environment.local file, but we're not going to use that. We're going to use .environment because we're going to need it for some other libraries which we are going to use. So what you have to do is copy these keys in your .environment file. So go ahead and either click on the show and copy everything, or you can just use this copy button right here. Great. Once you have that, what you have to do is you have to create a new .environment file inside of your file browser right here, and just go ahead and paste the next public clerk publishable key and clerk secret key. Of course, make sure this is all in one line. Mine collapses because I'm zoomed in. Great. So next public clerk publishable key and clerk secret key. Great. Those two are important for you to have. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue in docs right here. So make sure you click continue in docs, and you should see use clerk with Next.js right here. Great. So I'm going to zoom in here again so we can follow these instructions right here. First thing, let's install the clerk/Next.js. So you can just copy this right here, or just follow along in my terminal and see what I write there. So I have the terminal here, and I'm going to shut down my application. So npm install add clerk/Next.js like this. Let me just expand this a bit more. There we go. And just press enter like that. And wait a couple of seconds for this to install. Great. Now that this has been installed, let's look at what is step 2. So step 2 says set environment keys, but we already did that from this page right here, so no need to do it twice. And just confirm that you have this too in your .environment file. Great, so now we can go immediately to step 3, which says that we have to mount the clerk provider. So where do we mount providers inside of Next 13 app router application? Well, we mount them inside of our root layout, and that root layout is inside of the app folder layout.tsx. So not this layout which we created in an organizational route. We have to do it in this main layout right here because we want it to encapsulate our entire application and all the routes inside of it. Great. So go inside of your root layout right here and go ahead and import clerk provider from add/clerk Next.js like this. And now you can copy this clerk provider and you can go ahead and follow this documentation. Make sure you selected the app router instructions here and just go ahead and wrap the entire application in a clerk provider like this. There we go. And you can indent this inside. Great. Now what we have to do is we have to add our middleware file to actually protect our routes. So make sure you added the clerk provider to your app layout.tsx. Make sure you've saved this file. And now what you have to do is you have to create a new file inside of your file browser called middleware.ts like this. Make sure you don't misspell this. So it needs to be middleware.ts like that. And you have to copy what it's written in this step 4 in the clerk documentation and just paste it here. Or you can pause the screen and write it, but I recommend you just copy and paste it. So all I did was click continue in docs and scroll to the 4th step where it says protect your application, because copying this is prone to mistakes. So it's better, reading it from my screen and then manually writing is prone to mistakes. But if you just copy it from here, it's much simpler. Great. So now that we have the middleware.ts, what we have to do is we have to create our sign up and sign in pages. So make sure that your app router is selected again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside of my app folder right here. And I'm actually not just going to create a sign up folder like it's written in the documentation, because I prepared my organizational out folder and my organizational routes. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to remove these two. So I don't need to log in and register anymore. You can remove them. And instead, go ahead and create a new folder inside of these routes and name it sign-up like this. And inside of that folder, create another folder with double square brackets like this. sign dash up again like this. So this is another convention in Next 13, which is exposing all the necessary routes for Clerk to work inside of the app router. And now inside of that folder, make sure you add page.tsx like this. And you can just copy and paste what it's written here like that. There we go. Great. And now we have to do the same thing, but for the sign in page. So create a new folder. Inside of your organizational routes, sign-in like this, and create a new folder inside. So double square brackets, ... sign-in. Make sure you don't do any typos here, and create a new file, page.tsx again. Go ahead and copy this and paste it inside and save the file. So now you have two page.tsx's. You have one for sign in, which is importing the sign in component, and one in sign up, which is importing the sign up component. Just make sure that is true for your files as well. Great. And one more thing that we have to do is very simply go back to in our .environment file right here. And you have to go ahead and copy these routes and just paste them like this. So how do we know that this Clerk sign in URL goes to /sign-in and this sign up goes to /sign up? How do we know that? Well, we know that because in our app folder, we named that routes exactly like that. So if your folder name is sign in and your inner folder has double square brackets ... sign in, that means that this needs to be sign in. That also means that you can rename them if you want to. If you want to name it login, you can do that. Just make sure you replace login here. Make sure you replace login here and here as well. Same is true for sign up if you want to replace that with register. Great. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and we can run our application. So npm run dev like this. Let's go back and let's refresh this and let's see what happens now. So let's just wait a couple of seconds and look at this. I'm redirected immediately to this sign up component. And you can see how it has a red background because our sign up and sign in routes are inside of this organizational folder, which has this layout.tsx with bg red as background. So we can now finally remove this background red, right? We don't need it. So we just need the h full. We also need a flex. We also need items-center, and we need justify-center. So just like that, we centered both our sign in, and if you click on sign up in this lower no account text, you can see that also the other page is centered. So this is how useful our layout is inside of our organizational folder, because this layout is reflected to all routes inside of this folder. That's what I was trying to explain to you earlier with the background color. Great. So now what should happen once we log in? So you can either use Google or email and password. You should get redirected to this protected route right here. And you can try manually. If you change the URL and try to access that protected route, you can see that I'm redirected back to sign in. So I'm just going to go and log in with Google now. And there we go, I logged in, and now this is a protected route is written right here. And now I need to add something to log out, right? So what we can do is this very cool component that Clerk has, which is in step 6 in the documentation, called user button right here. So again, make sure you pre-selected the app router, and let's go inside. I'm just gonna close everything and go back inside of your app folder, main routes page.tsx right here. And instead of saying this is a protected route, you can remove that, and instead let's add the user button from @clerk/next.js like this. And one important thing you have to add before you test the login, the logout, is after sign out URL like this, and just make sure it leads back to /. If you don't add this, it's gonna go redirect to clerk servers. So make sure you do this right here. Great. And now you can go ahead and see the logged in user. So I can go ahead and manage my account here. I can delete my account. I can see my active devices. I logged in with Google, which means that I can set my password. I can look at my security. So really, really cool. And of course, I can just log out and I am back here. And yes, so this is what happens. I did not refresh after I added after sign out URL. So you can see that my URL right now is no longer localhost. So just make sure you go back to localhost like this. Make sure you refresh this page. I'm gonna go back log in with Google. Great. And now I'm gonna go ahead and try one more time to sign out. And there we go. Now I am back in localhost in my sign in page. So just make sure you're back inside of the app logged in, because for what we are going to do next, we're gonna have to be logged in. So just like this. So I paused my screen and I logged in. Great job. You've successfully set up authentication. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna go and start working on our sidebar. So before we move on to creating our sidebar, let's enable the dark mode and the toggle between light and dark mode in this project. So first thing I want to do is I want to install a package called Next Themes. So let's go ahead and let's go and run npm install next-themes like this, and make sure you just press enter and wait a second for this to install. Alright, now that this is done, what we have to do is we have to go inside of chat-cn documentation. So go inside of the documentation and click on dark mode in the sidebar right here and select Next.js as your framework. So now let's go ahead and let's copy this theme provider and let's add it in our components. So I'm going to go ahead inside of my components folder and I'm going to create a new folder called providers. So I'm doing this so I differentiate between providers and between our actual components. And inside, create a new file, theme-provider.tsx like this. And inside you can just paste this right here. So let me show you how this looks in full view. So we import React, we import theme provider as next themes provider from next themes, and we import the theme provider props right here. Great. And make sure it's marked as use client. So basically just copy the first step, create theme provider. What we have to do now is go inside of the app folder inside of layout.tsx right here. And I'm just going to collapse this children inside of my body here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add our newly created theme provider, but make sure you don't import it from next themes. Make sure you import it from add/components/providers/theme provider. So just like this right here. Great. Now that you have the theme provider, go ahead and wrap the children around it. Just make sure you don't put this outside of body. So make sure you put it inside. Great. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's give it an attribute of class. Let's give it a default theme of dark like this. And let's give it enable system to be false. And let's give it a storage key of something unique like Discord-theme like that. Great. And now we have that. And that was basically the step 2 of this documentation that I have opened on the side right here. And one more thing I want to add is this suppress hydration warning to our HTML element. So go here and add suppress hydration warning just like this. Great. And now if you visit your application, let's actually run it. So go inside of terminal and run npm run dev. So npm run dev like this. Just add the application. Let's refresh and let's see if anything changed right now. I think the website should be in dark mode like this. So if yours is not in dark mode, one thing you can do is you can add forced theme to be dark like this. And now it's 100% going to be dark. You can do the same thing with forced theme light like this. And now it's light. right? But I'm gonna go ahead and use the default theme dark, and make sure you add the storage key like this, and then you can go ahead and switch between light and dark mode safely. So now what I want to do is I want to add a toggle button where we can manually switch between these two. So I'm going to collapse everything here. I'm going to go inside of this documentation, and I'm going to follow step 3, add a mode toggle right here. So here you see how it's going to look. So we can switch to dark and we can switch to light. And let's go and click into code right here and just copy this entire thing. And let's go ahead and let's go inside of our components folder, and not inside of providers, not inside of UI, but just inside of the components folder, create a new file and give it a name of mode-toggle.tsx like this. And inside you can paste this entire thing. And you're gonna notice that we get this error that drop-down menu doesn't exist. And that is because it doesn't. So we have to add the drop-down menu from Shadcn UI. So let's go ahead and let me zoom out a bit and go inside of components and find the drop-down menu component right here. So this is what we are going to install, this exact component. So go ahead and run this command, npx shadcn-ui at latest add drop-down menu. So I'm gonna copy this as npm because we are using npm here. Go inside of your terminal. So I'm gonna shut down my application. I'm gonna paste this. So this is the command npx shadcn-ui at latest add drop-down menu, and just go ahead and press Y to confirm this installation like this. And after that is done, you can go ahead and npm run dev like this, your application again, so your localhost is active. Great. Go back to your localhost and make sure you refresh. So every time you shut down your application and rerun npm run dev, make sure you refresh. Otherwise, your hot reload is not going to be working and you might be wondering what you're doing wrong. And you can see that now the error is gone. That's because this UI drop-down menu exists because we just added it with that CLI command, and you can see all the necessary components we need inside of that. Great. So that is located right here in the UI alongside our button, and we already added the button in the first part of the tutorial, so that's why the error for button did not come. Great. Now that you have that, you can go ahead and I'm gonna close everything. Go inside of your app folder, go inside of main routes page.tsx right here, and after the user button, add the mode toggle from add/components/mode toggle like this. And you're gonna see this little icon, which is now the moon, but you can go ahead and click light, and now it's the sun like this. Great. Great job. Oh yeah, and the system, it can be enabled only if you enable inside of your app folder layout.tsx. So I put this to false, but you can put it to true. You can either write true like this, or you can just add this. So this is the equivalent, and you can save. And let's try system now. So light, dark, let me just refresh. System, light. Okay, now it's working. Great. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep this to false because I've noticed some issues when switching, when having default dark mode with this option enabled. But you can try for yourself. If your dark mode is on by default, just make sure that your system is not in dark mode, right? So I want to force the dark mode to my users, but I also want to enable them to switch to light mode. But I want to force dark mode even if their system is in light mode, right? Great. So you can play around with these options right here. It's important that you have the storage key, and the default theme is dark if you prefer dark, but the attribute class is important. Great. Now that we have these two, we can go ahead and actually add them to our sidebar component. So let's go ahead and let's do that now. My apologies, I'm getting ahead of myself, so we're not going to do the sidebar yet. One more thing I want to add here is I just want to add a class name to the body. Whoops, we already have the class name. So what I actually want to do is I want to import my cn from add/lib/utils. Make sure you import cn right here. And go ahead and leave the font class name in the first one, and in the second one we're going to add some different class names depending on whether we are looking at this website in light mode or in dark mode. So I'm going to go ahead and write bg white, so this is for a light mode, but on dark it's going to be bg bg like this, whoops, dark bg dash open square brackets like this, and we're gonna paste in the hex code 313338 like this. So now if I go ahead and switch to dark, you can see that it's no longer fully black color. Instead, it's this nice grayish color. Great. So that's it for setting up our theme. What we're going to do next is we're going to set up Prisma and our MySQL database, and we're going to start creating some modules and some servers. So what we're going to do now, we're going to set up our database and our Prisma schema. The first step of doing that is adding some packages. So let's go inside of our terminal here and let's run npm install -D Prisma like this and just press enter. So after this Prisma has been added to your dev dependencies, what you have to do is run npx prisma init like this. And this is going to add one folder and it's going to modify our environment file. So let's take a look at that. So you can see that now you have a new folder called Prisma, and inside you have a schema.prisma file right here. And if you take a peek in your .environment file, you can see that the last thing we added was this clerk environment variables. But now we have this big comment and we have a database URL right here. So this was inserted by Prisma. What we have to do next is we have to modify this with our actual database. So in order to do that, I'm going to use PlanetScale. So go to planetscale.com or just Google PlanetScale database and go ahead and either click get started or sign in, depending if you already have an account or not. So your screen might look a little bit different, but all you have to do is find the new database and click create new database like this. Go ahead and give your database a name. So I'm going to use discord-tutorial like this, and make sure you select the free hobby option. So it's free forever. And just make sure that this is your first time building a database. If you already have a database on PlanetScale, you're going to have to remove your old one and then you can try again. And this hobby option is going to be available for you. So you can always have one completely free database forever. So make sure you select this one. And again, confirm that it's free on the bottom right here and just click create a database. Great. So there we go. Now our database is initializing. So PlanetScale is using MySQL, which means that we're also going to have to do some modifications in our Prisma schema. And one more thing I want to give you a tip for is that if you're having trouble selecting the hobby option or creating your database, it is required for you to add a credit card. Regardless, they are not going to charge you. So the credit card is just their security tip. Great. So let's just wait a second for this to connect. There we go. So it's initialized. And now go ahead and find the connect button. And what you have to do is to create a password. So let's click create a password right here. And what we have to do is we have to click connect with and select Prisma like this. And now you can see that we have our database URL for our MySQL database. So make sure you don't close this window because you're not going to be able to see this information again. But don't worry, all you have to do is just create a new connection. So go ahead and copy this .environment file and go back inside of your .environment right here. And what you have to do is replace this dummy database URL, which was inserted by Prisma, and paste it with the real one like this and save your environment file. Great. Now that that is done, go ahead and select this schema.prisma tab and just copy everything inside. And you are going to paste that inside of your new Prisma folder, schema.prisma. So just select everything and paste like this. Great. So that's it for PlanetScale. You can close this window now. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's create some models inside of schema.prisma. So the first model we are going to need is the profile model. So let's go ahead and write model profile. Let's give it an ID, which is a type of string, has an @ID decorator, and the default value is unique ID like this. Great. It's also going to have a user ID, which is going to come from our clerk, and every profile needs to have a unique user ID. So make sure you put that decorator as well. Name is going to be a type of a string. image URL is also going to be a type of string, but it's also going to have @db.text. So db.text makes it a kind of a special string. You can Google more for the exact specifications, but the thing I want to use it for is that it gives me more characters for this string, and image URLs can be pretty long. So just in case, I'm adding the @db.text here. Let's go ahead and let's add email, which is also a type of string, and let's also add @db.text like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's add created at date time at default now like this. And let's create updated at date time at updated at like this. Great. So now that we have our profile model, we can create our server model. So model server like this is going to have an ID, which is a type of string, ID decorator, and the default value of unique ID like this. Great. And now let's give this server a name, which is a type of string, an image URL, which is a string with the decorator db.text. Let's also give it an invite code like this. So this is a type of string and db.text. Great. And now let's connect it to this profile model right here. So for that, we have to write profile ID to be a type of string, and relation is going to be profile again with a capital P. So we are referring to this model right here. Go ahead and write @relation. Go ahead and write fields, and in the array, write profile ID. In the references, you're going to write ID, and one more field you're going to add is on delete to be cascade like this. Great. So now we have an error because we have a relation in the server, but the profile doesn't have a back relation with the server. So we have to go back inside of our profile model, and we have to add servers like this, server, and an array like this. Great. So now the error is gone, and now we have to fix this warning. The way we fix that is by adding @index profile ID like this. Great. So now that we have our server, let's just wrap it up by also adding the created at, which is a date time, default value of now, and updated at, which is also a date time with the value of updated at like this. Great. So now every server is also going to need to have a member, and every member needs to have its role. So let's create an enum member role like this with the possibilities of admin, moderator, and guest like this. And now we can create our model. So I'm just going to zoom in back. Our model member like this. Our model member is also going to have an ID, which is a string, decorator ID, and the default value of UUID like this. Great. Our member is also going to have a role. So role is going to be a member role with the default value of guest like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's connect this member model with our profile model right here. So we're going to have to do the same thing. So let's write profile ID string, and let's write profile again @relation fields like this, profile ID, references, ID, and on delete cascade like this. Now let's go back. So it needs to be exactly the same as this one in the server, right? So the error we are getting is that we have a relation from member to profile, but we don't have a relation from profile to members. So let's add members, member, and an array like this. And there we go. The error is now gone. And let's go ahead and let's just add @index profile ID like this. Great. And every member is also going to need to have a relation with the server that they are in. So server ID is a type of string. Server is server @relation fields, server ID, references, ID, and on delete cascade like this. Great. Now let's go back inside of the server right here, and let's write members to be member like this. Great. So it's a bit of a different relation as opposed to this profile. That's because here we are referencing the server ID, which means that in the server we need to define the members it has like that. Great. And what we have to do now is add that index server ID like this. Great. Let's also go ahead and let's add the created at, which is a date time with a default value of now, and updated at, which is date time, updated at like this. Great. And one more thing we have to create is the channel model. And every channel model needs to have a channel type. So let's go ahead and write enum channel type. And the possibilities are going to be text, audio, so text, audio, and video like this. Great. And now let's write the model channel, which is going to have an ID. So I'm going to zoom in back. ID, which is a string, and it's going to have an at ID decorator and at default UUID like this. Great. Channel is also going to have a name, which is going to be a string, and it's also going to have a type, which is going to be channel type, and the default one is going to be text. Great. Now we have to connect the channel model with our profile. So let's go ahead and let's write profile ID to be string like this. And let's write profile at relation fields like this, profile ID. Let's write references ID and on delete cascade like that. Great. Let's also write server ID to be a string and server at relation fields, server ID, references ID, and on delete to be cascade. Great. So we now connected this channel with both the profile and the server. So first thing we have to do is go all the way back to our profile. So go ahead and find the profile, and just below the members, just add channels, channel, and an array like this. So what we have to do now is go back inside of the server right here, and just below the members, let's add channels, channel like this. Great. And now we can go back inside of the channel right here, and we can go ahead and add at index to be server ID, and at index to be profile ID like this. Great. And let's also go ahead and let's add the created at, which is a date time with a default value of now, and updated at, which is date time at updated at like this. Great. So we've written our initial models. Of course, we're going to have more models like messages and conversations and direct messages, but this is enough for now. Great. So what we have to do now is we have to go inside of our terminal, and we have to write two commands. So we have to do this every time we modify our schema.prisma. So the first one is going to be npx prisma generate. So this is going to add this schema to our node modules so we can safely develop with it. After this has been done, what you have to do is run npx prisma db push. So what this is going to do is it's going to create all of these collections into our PlanetScale or whatever you're using for your MySQL database. So in this tutorial, I show you how to do it PlanetScale, but of course you can do it any way you like it. Great. So now that we did that, what we have to do is we have to create a util, a database util, which we're going to use throughout our API and our server components. So I'm going to do that inside of my lib folder right here. But before I do that, let's go back inside of our terminal and let's run npm install at prisma/client like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's go inside of our lib folder and create a new file db.ts like this. Go ahead and import Prisma client from @/Prisma client like this. Let's declare global var Prisma to be a type of Prisma client, pipe undefined like this. Great. And now let's write export const db to be global this dot prisma pipe new prisma client. Whoops. Like this. Great. And now let's just write if process dot environment dot node underscore environment is not production. In that case, assign global this dot prisma to be db like this. Great. So what we did with this small util is we added a little hack in order for our hot reload in Next13 to not initialize too many Prisma clients. So technically we could have just done this, right? We could have just written this one line and that would be it. That's how it's gonna work in production. But in development, we have something called hot reload. And if we just left it like this, every single time we change a line of code in our project, new Prisma client would be initialized. So what we did is we appended this Prisma client to a variable global this.prisma because global this is not affected by hot reload. So I did not invent this trick. This is something I'm pretty sure you can find in the official documentation of Prisma, but also everywhere on the internet you're going to find a very similar solution to this one. Great, so make sure you save this file. What I want to do now is I want to modify my initial page.tsx file, which is currently inside of my main routes page.tsx right here. So I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to use this page.tsx to create our initial profile. So every time that a new user comes to our website, we're going to go ahead and create their profile. And if their profile already exists, we're not going to create it, but we're just going to load it. So only one clerk login is going to be able to have one profile. Great. So we're going to do that now. So let's go ahead and let's close everything here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this main folder right here. So we're not going to need it. And also I am not running my application. So that's why I'm not getting any errors. So make sure yours is not running as well. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder in brackets setup. So this is going to be an organizational folder. And inside we're going to create page.tsx. Let's go ahead and let's create this and let's name it setup page like this. And it's going to be an asynchronous arrow function. So make sure you put async like this. And what we're going to do inside is we're going to return a div saying create a server like this. Great. So you can go ahead and start your application now just to see how this looks. So now it should load this setup page by default. It should no longer load our little button here. There we go. So now it says just create a server because we removed the main folder. So our root file is now this page.tsx because it is inside of an organizational folder as opposed to this out folder, which has its own routes. So this is our root file right here. Great. Now what we're going to do inside of here is we're going to attempt to load our profile. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and let's create a useful util to do that. So I'm going to go inside of lib and I'm going to create a new file, initial-profile.ts like this. Great. And let's go ahead and let's import current user and redirect to sign in from @clerk/next.js like this. And let's also import the structure db from ./db, but the way I'm gonna prefer it is using the alias /lib/db. So both is completely okay. I just have a preference. This is gonna work, but I have a preference to use this alias sign right here. It's clearer to me where things are. Great. Now let's go ahead and write export const initial profile to be an asynchronous arrow function. Right here, let's attempt to get the user using clerk. So const user is going to be await current user like this. If there is no user, it means we are not logged in. So let's return redirect to sign in like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's attempt to find our profile model. So const profile is equal await db.profile. So you can see how it auto-completes my profile. And if I try db.member, it also auto-completes my member. Same thing for channel and server. So for this one, we need db.profile. If you're getting an error for this, or if yours is not auto-completing, make sure that you didn't accidentally misspell it inside of your schema Prisma. Make sure that your schema Prisma is saved. If you're just not sure what's going wrong, you can always copy the schema Prisma from my GitHub. So make sure this is named profile and make sure you run those two commands that we need. So I'm not going to run them again. I'm just going to write them. So npx prisma generate. This is an important command for you to run, and npx prisma db push. So just make sure you've run those two. Great. If you did that, you're not going to have any problems. So db.profile.find unique like this. And go ahead and write where user ID is equal to user.id like this. Great. So we are going to attempt to find a profile connected to this logged in user. If there is a profile, we are very simply just going to return that profile. The function can end here, but if it's not, we need to create a new profile. So const new profile is going to be await db.profile.create like this. Data is going to be user ID, user.id like this. Name is going to be open backticks, user.first name like this, and user.last name like this. Image URL is going to be user.image URL, and email is going to be user.email address. Open an array 0.email address like this, and there we go. And just return new profile like this. Great. So now that we have this, we can go back inside of our setup page.tsx right here. Let's go ahead and let's import initial profile from /lib initial profile like this. And let's write const profile to be await initial profile like that. And what we're going to do now is we are going to attempt to find any server that this profile is a member of, right? So let's go ahead and write const server to be await db.server.find first where members. Oops, I did not import db, so my apologies. So I'm just going to remove this just so we follow this. So import db from /lib db. My apologies, I forgot to import that. So now let's go ahead and write await db.server.find first where members sum profile id is equal to profile.id. So we're going to search through all the servers and we're going to find the first one that has the profile ID in one of the members of that server. So we're going to assume that, okay, that this profile is a member of that server, and let's immediately load that server for the user in, let's say, a general channel, for example. But if user is not part of any servers, in that case, we're going to show this, create a server. So let's just go ahead and write if there is a server, in that case, return redirect, which you can import, well, from none of those. You can import it. Let's do it manually. So import redirect from next/navigation like this. Great. So redirect, open brackets, open backticks, /servers/ open this special object server.id. So if we manage to find a server that this profile is a part of, we're gonna immediately redirect them to that server. If there is no such server, we're gonna show them for now just a text create a server, but we're gonna turn that into a model where users can create a server. So what's gonna happen once I refresh this is we're gonna go ahead and try to find an existing profile with this clerk ID. If there is one, we're going to return it. If there isn't, we're gonna go ahead and create it. So what I recommend you do now for the full experience is just open a new terminal and write npx Prisma Studio like this. And you can go ahead and open this. So I'm just gonna collapse this. I'm gonna open this. So localhost 555 like this, and there we go. So right now I have no profiles inside of my application. So I'm going to save this setup page.tsx, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna attempt to refresh right here. And let's check our terminal to see if we got any error perhaps. So it seems like no errors here, which means that if I go inside of my Prisma Studio and if I refresh right here, there we go. So my ID is here, my user is here, and my name is right here. So you can see that now it says that profile has one one collection right here. So you should have the very same result. And now if you refresh again, and try and refresh your npx Prisma Studio here, you can see that it's still just one profile. So you did not create duplicate profiles for this user. Great, that is exactly what we wanted. And since you didn't find any server, it showed us this div saying create a server. So that's what we're gonna do next. We're gonna create a model which is gonna prompt users to create their own servers. Great job so far. What we are going to build now is we are going to replace this div saying create a server, which is rendered if there is no server that this user is a part of. And in order to do that, we're going to need to import some components from Chassis and UI. So let's prepare our terminal here. So I have my Prisma Studio here running, but I can shut that down. I don't need it right now. So I just want this one server right here, and I'm going to shut down my application as well. So let's go inside of Chassis and UI and head into the components here. So we're going to need to add a couple of components. First one is going to be a dialog, because this model to create our server is going to be inside of a dialog. So let's get that component first. So let's go ahead and find the dialog component. And let's go ahead and let's add this command. So I'm just going to expand my screen right here. I'm going to copy this as npm and I'm going to paste it here. So the command is npx chatscn-ui at latest add dialog. And let's just press enter here and confirm that you want to install that. Once that is done, let's go ahead and let's find some other components here. So besides the dialog, we are also going to need an input component. So let's go ahead and find the input right here. Okay, and let's install that as well. So npx chatscn-ui latest add input. I'm going to copy that as well. And the same way I did with the dialog, I'm going to paste this. And I'm just going to go and press enter and confirm this installation. And one more thing we need is the entire form. So we're going to be installing React Hook form, and we're also going to be installing Zod with this one CLI command right here. So scroll all the way down to installation right here and copy npx chatscn-ui latest add form like this. So I'm going to paste that here. Let me expand my screen a bit more so you can see it in one line. So npx chatscn-ui add latest add form. So this one right here, and press enter and just confirm the installation. And that should add some new packages in our project. Great, now that this is done, you can go ahead and do npm run dev, so your project is back and running on localhost. So I'm going to refresh my localhost right here, so I ensure that everything I do is up to date. Great. So what we have to do now is we have to replace this create a server div with rendering of our initial model like this, which now doesn't exist. So when I save the file, I'm going to get an error. So let's close everything here. Let's go inside of our components, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder here called models. So I'm going to keep all of my models inside of this folder right here so they don't get mixed with stuff like mode toggle or providers. And inside, go ahead and create initial-model.tsx like this. Great, and let's go ahead and let's start developing this right here. So first thing I want to do is mark this as use client, because this is also going to be a form, which means it's going to have a lot of interactivity inside. Great, so let's go ahead and let's write export const initial model like this. And let's go ahead and let's just write a div saying this will be a model like that. And now we can go back inside of our app folder inside of setup page.tsx, and let's go ahead and import this. So initial model from add/components/models/initial-model. So this line that I've added right here, let me just expand my screen. So this is how it should look like, and save this file. And there we go, no more errors. Now we just have a text saying that this will be a model. So let's actually go ahead and import everything we need from the dialog, which we just added in Chat-CN UI. So let's take a look at our components UI right here. So now you should have the dialog.tsx, the form.tsx, input and label.tsx. The button and drop down have existed here before. Great. So let's go ahead. Let's go back inside of our initial model here, and let's import all the necessary things we need from add/components/UI/dialog like this. So we are going to need the dialog, we're going to need the dialog content, we're going to need the dialog description, the dialog footer, the dialog header, and the dialog title like this. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's create that. So instead of rendering this div right here, we're going to render the dialog component like that, and let's give it the default value of open to be true, or you can just write this, so it's the same thing. And inside, let's go ahead and let's add the dialog content. So we already have that imported, and let's add the class name bg-white, text-black, padding-0, overflow-hidden, and save the file. Great, and now you can see how I have a small line right here, which is of course going to expand the more content we add inside. So this is a dialog which is going to be open by default, because that's the way we're going to use it. So it's going to be rendered if there are no servers. So no need to add any controls to open or close it. Great, so inside of this dialog content with these class names that we have right here, let's give it a dialog header, which we also have imported, and let's write customize your server like this. Great, and let's give this a class name of text-center and text-sync. Whoops, my apologies, so I got ahead of myself. Let's delete the dialog header. So what I just wanted to write is going to be inside of dialog title, not dialog header, sorry. So yes, the first thing is dialog header, but with different class names. So dialog header is just going to be our spacing. So dialog header is going to have a padding top of 8 and is going to have a padding on the side of 6 like this. And then inside we're going to use the dialog title, my apologies. So like this is the complete code. Great. And inside we're going to write customize your server or create your server, however you want it. And let's go ahead and let's give this a class name of text-2xl, text-center, and font-bold like this. Great, so you can expand a bit to see how this looks. And now let's go ahead and let's create our dialog description just below this dialog title. So go ahead and add dialog description here. So inside of the dialog header, and go ahead and write give your server a personality like this, with a name and an image, you can always change it later like this. And let's go ahead and give this dialog description a class name of text-center and text-sync like this, -500 like that. There we go. Okay, so I'm just gonna expand a bit and there we go. Great. Now above the dialog, below the dialog header right here, we're gonna go ahead and add our form. So let's go ahead and let's prepare all the stuff we need for our form. So right here, I'm gonna write const form to be equal to use form from React hook form like this. Go ahead and open this object inside, and let's go ahead and let's give it the default values of a name and image URL, and both of them are empty by default. Now let's go ahead and let's import Zod and Zod resolver so we can validate this form using our form schema. So here at the top, I'm gonna add import asterisk as z from Zod, and I'm gonna add import, I'm gonna destruct Zod resolver from at hook form /resolvers/Zod like this, and I'm gonna move React hook form above with them right here. Great, so now that we have that, outside of the initial model, we can create our form schema. So const form schema is gonna be z.object, name is gonna be z.string.minimum1, and let's give it a custom message to be server name is required like this, and below that image URL is going to be z.string.min1, and a custom message for this error is going to be server image is required like this. Great, so now we have the form schema, and now we can connect it using this Zod resolver inside of this use form hook right here. So above the default values, go ahead and add the resolver like this, Zod resolver form schema like this. There we go. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's just extract the loading state from this form so we can know when to disable our inputs if it's currently submitting a request. So const is loading is going to be form.formState.isSubmitting like this. Great. And let's just add the onSubmit function, which for now is just going to log our values. So const onSubmit is going to be an asynchronous function which takes in the values, which are a type of z.infer, open pointy brackets like this, and write type of form schema. So our form schema is defined outside right here. I'm just going to expand things a bit so they are in one line. All right, so this is going to be an arrow function, and all it's going to do is log the values like this. So that's all it's going to do for now. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's actually import all the stuff we need from our form. So just below this dialog, let's go ahead and let's import the following things from add/components/UI/form. We're going to need the form. We're going to need the form control. We're going to need the form field like this, so form field. We're gonna need form item, form label, and form message like this. And let's also go ahead and import our input from add/components/UI/input, and let's also import our button from add/components/UI/button like this. Okay, and now we can go ahead and find the end of this dialog header right here, and we can actually go below that. So still inside of dialog content, but just below the dialog header, add a form which we imported like this, and go ahead and open curly brackets and spread our form, which comes from this use form right here. So we are passing all the necessary props it needs Great. So inside of this form, let's go ahead and let's add an HTML native form element. So form like this. Let's go ahead and let's give this an onSubmit of form.handle submit on submit like this. So we're going to use the handle submit from our form hook, and we're going to pass that to this custom on submit so we can work with those values passed by that form after it's been validated. Great. And now back to this native HTML4 element. Let's just give it a class name of space-y-8 like this. Okay. And now what we are going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and create a div with a class name of space-y-8 px-6 like this. And inside, let's create a div like this with another class name flex items-center, justify-center, and text-center like this. And all I'm gonna write is to do image upload. Okay, so this is going to be our image upload component right here. Great. And now what I want to do is just go outside of this div for image upload and go ahead and add the form field, which we imported. And form field is actually a self-closing tag. So just like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's give it a control of form.control. And let's give it a name of name, because that is the field name that this form field is going to control. And let's give it a render option. Let's go ahead and destructure a field immediately from this arrow function like this. And let's go ahead and let's add the form item inside. We already have that imported. Let's go ahead and let's add the form label inside like this. And let's just write server name like this, and let's give it some styles. So I'm gonna add a class name here to be uppercase, text-xs, font-bold like this, text-sync-500. On dark mode, we're gonna use text-secondary /70 like this. There we go. And below the form label, let's go ahead and let's add the form control. We also have that imported already. And inside of that, we're going to add our input component, which is a self-closing tag. Let's give it a value of disabled to be is loading like that. And let's give it a class name of bg-sync-300/50 like this, a border of 0 like that, a focus-visible colon ring-0 like this, text-black, and focus-visible colon ring-offset-0 as well. Great. Let's also give it a placeholder to be enter server name like that, and let's go ahead and spread ... field, which we get from this render destructuring right here. So by spreading the field, we spread all the necessary on change, on blur, and on focus handlers using React hook form in this nice and easy way. And great, you can already see how our model is starting to look like something. Now let's go ahead and let's find the end of this div right here, but still inside of this native HTML form element. And let's go ahead and let's add the dialog footer, which we already have imported. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a class name to be bg-gray-100, px-6, and py-4 like that. And inside, we're gonna go and render a button, which we also already have imported, and we're just gonna write create like this. And let's go ahead and give it a class name. Sorry, we're not gonna give this button any class names. We're just gonna give it a disabled prop of is loading like this. Great. So now if I expand this, There we go, we have a small create button right here. And one thing I want to do is I want to add a variant to this button called primary. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go inside of our components folder, inside of UI, and go inside of button.tsx. And just like we did in the beginning of this tutorial, I'm going to add a new variant here. So find the variants object, go inside of another object here called variant, find the link right here, and below the link, add a new variant called primary, like that. And let's give it a background of indigo-500, a text-white, and hover is going to be bg-indigo. indigo-500/90, like this. So let me just expand this so you can see it in one line. So this is the line that I added. So background indigo 500, text is white, and on hover we also use the background indigo but with an opacity. Great. Now save this file. You can close this button, go back inside of your initial model, find this button and give it a variant of this newly created, not secondary, but primary option right here. There we go. Now it looks much better. And one thing that we missed is the form message that we need to add. Whoops, so I just expanded a bit too much. So go ahead and find your input right here. And one thing that we need to add below this form control right here is the form message, like this. So that's it. That's all we have to do. And now if you try and click on create and not fill anything inside, you're gonna have this error right here. So I'm gonna refresh to demonstrate. So let's click and create, and there we go. Now let's just quickly do a fix for these errors right here. So we have a hydration error because this is a model, and models are notorious for causing hydration errors. So in order to fix that, we're gonna go ahead and do a little mounting trick here. So what you have to do is find the start of your initial model and write const is mounted, set is mounted to be equal to use state from React. So make sure you've imported use state from React as I did right here, and give it a default value of false, like that. Now let's go ahead and let's write use effect also from React. So make sure you imported use effect and use state from React, like that. And in this simple arrow function inside with this empty dependency array, all we're gonna do is set is mounted to true, like that. And now what we are gonna do is just before this return dialog, we're gonna write if exclamation point is mounted. So if it's not mounted, return null, like this. Great. So now if you try and refresh, you see that no more hydration errors are happening and the form still works as expected. Great job. So we set up our hook form, we set up our validation. What we have to do next is we have to create this image upload component, and we're going to do that by setting up upload thing. So that's what we're going to do in the next part. Great. So what we have to do now is create this upload image component, and we're going to do that using upload thing. So I'm going to expand my browser screen and I'm going to visit uploadthing.com. So you can either visit that website or just Google upload thing. Go ahead and sign in using GitHub like this. And after that, you're going to get redirected to your dashboard. As you can see, I already have one application here because I was testing it out, but you can ignore that. Yours is probably going to be empty. So what you have to do is find this create a new app button in my top right corner. Go ahead and give your app a name. So in my case, it's going to be Discord-tutorial. And you can leave the second field empty and just click create app like this. Now you're going to go ahead and head into this sidebar where it says API keys. Click on here, and what you have to do is just copy this environment keys and paste them inside your .environment file. So I'm going to go ahead and close everything. I'm going to go inside of my .environment file, and after our MySQL database URL, just paste your upload thing secret and upload thing app ID, which you just copied. So let me expand my screen a bit. Okay, great. Now let's go back inside of the overview right here, and let's visit the Getting Started guide right here. Great. So you can read a bit more about this if you're interested in how it works, but we're gonna go immediately to the Getting Started field right here. So first, let's set up all the packages that we need. So we're gonna need to install all of this here, so you can just copy it, or you can look at my terminal right now. So I'm gonna go inside of my terminal. I'm going to shut down my application, and I'm going to paste that. So we are doing npm install upload thing / react, and react - drop zone. So all of this is in one line. Don't get it confused. I'm just zooming in so you can read it easier. And just press enter like this and wait for all of those to install. Great. After this has been installed, we've successfully set up the packages. So the step 2 is adding environment variables, but we already did that. Great. So now we have to set up our Next.js application. So if you're using the pages router, click on pages, but if you're following this tutorial, click on app router right here. So first thing we have to do is we have to set up our file router right here. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to zoom in. So we're going to create this app API upload thing core TS file first. Let's go right here, and let's go and close everything. Go inside of the app folder, create a new API folder, and inside create another folder called upload thing like this, and inside create a new file core.ts like this, and inside you're gonna paste this entire thing. So let me just zoom out. So I am in the documentation under the Next.js setup, selecting the app router option right here. So just copy this and paste it in here. Great. So we are going to modify this a little bit. So this out function right here is of course a fake out function because, well, of course they cannot assume what we are using for authentication. So let's go ahead step by step and modify this so it works for our case. So we are using clerk for authentication. So let's go ahead and import auth from @clerk/next.js like this. And now let's go ahead and remove this fake auth function here, and let's name it const handle auth like this, which is an arrow function. Let's extract the user ID. So const user ID is equal auth like this. And let's write if there is no user ID. In that case, throw new error unauthorized like that, and return user ID like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's modify this our file router. So I'm just going to remove the comments so we can focus on exactly what we need to change. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove everything inside of this file router. So this is my entire code. So export const our file router satisfies this file router. And inside we're going to create our own cases. So first one is going to be a case for uploading the server image. So server image is going to be a function. So this is this constant that we have right here. Go ahead and extract. Sorry, we're not extracting anything. We are just passing in the configuration. So we are going to accept an image. Go ahead and open an object with max file size to be 4 megabytes and max file count to be 1 like that. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's chain the middleware like that, which is going to be an arrow function, which is going to call the handle auth function like this. And let's chain the on upload complete, which in my case is just going to be an empty arrow function like that. Now let's also do the message file. So we're gonna need this later when we start uploading attachments in our messages, but I just want to prepare it already. So for our message file, again called the f function, and let's give it some options on what we can upload. So instead of actually passing in an object, we can pass in an array like this and just select an image and PDF like this. You can of course go ahead and play around with all of these amazing options that it offers you. You can pass in videos, all that stuff, but I'm just gonna work with images and PDFs for this tutorial. Let's add the middleware like that. Let's call the handle auth like that. And on upload complete, in my case, it's just going to be an empty arrow function like that. And one thing I forgot was after this on upload complete for the server image, just remember to add a comma because we are working inside of an object right here. Great. So now we modified this core to work with our case. So before we move on, I just want to change one thing in the handle auth. So instead of const user ID from auth, we actually have to destructure that. So my apologies, even though this would still technically work, because if there is no authentication object, it's fair to throw an error, but let's just return the user ID properly like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's see what is the next thing that we have to do here. So now we have to create this Next.js API route, which uses this file router, which we just created. So I'm going to zoom in again to see what is the second step right here. So we have to create a route.ts inside of the upload thing folder. So let me just expand this like that. And in this folder upload thing where we have core.ts, go ahead and create a new file, a route.ts like that. Great. And now what you're going to do is you're going to paste this from the documentation right here. So you can just copy this. It's a very simple code snippet and paste it here. Great. And you should have no errors because we have the package installed and we have the ./core file in the same folder right here. Great. Now let's see what are the next steps here. So you can play around with creating this upload thing components, and we are going to use some of those. So let's go ahead and let's go. So this one uses the source utils folder, but none of this is set in stone. So you can organize this however you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close everything. Just make sure you've wrapped up this route.ts, so save this file. I'm going to close everything. I'm going to go inside of lib right here. And I'm going to create a new file called uploadthing.ts like that. And let's go ahead and let's copy this step 3, creating the upload thing components here like that. And let's just paste it here. So obviously we have to modify it a little bit. I'm getting this error here. We're going to resolve that now. So instead of using this curly sign, let's use the @ sign like this. So @/app API upload thing /core. Great. And now we are ready to actually use this inside of our initial model. So I'm going to close everything here. And well, you can keep the upload thing open. What I would recommend is that you actually go ahead and visit the dashboard and go inside of your newly created app right here and click on files so you can confirm that the files are uploaded or not. So just keep this page open. Great. Now let's go back inside of our application here. And before we continue developing, let's just go ahead inside of our middleware file. So let me just find it right here. And let's extend this auth middleware with public routes, an array, and just pass in /API/upload thing. So upload thing is auth protected for uploading, but we still need to add it to public routes to avoid potential errors. You can find that information in the documentation of upload thing. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's go back inside of components, models, initial model right here. And let's start modifying this to do which we've written right here. And let's start by wrapping this in an actual form field. So I'm going to write form field. We already have that. And again, form field is a self-closing tag. Let's go ahead and let's give it a control of form.control like that. Let's give it a name of image URL. And let's give it a render. Extract the field in this arrow function and immediately return like this a form item like that, a form control like that, and now you can just go ahead and write file upload. Let's just see how that looks. And yeah, I have not started my app, my apologies. So let's go inside of the terminal and npm run dev. So I just want to confirm that there are no errors here before we actually create our file upload component. So let's just wait a second for this to load. Okay, great, so no errors. And now let's replace this with the file upload component like this. And if you save this, you're gonna get an error. So let's go inside of our components and create a new file, file-upload.tsx like that. Let's mark it as use client like this. And let's go ahead and let's export const file upload like that. And let's just return a div saying file upload component like that, so we know it's coming from the file upload. Let's go back inside of our initial model, and now let's let's import this. So file upload from /file upload like that. And if you save, the error should go away and you should see this text file upload component. Let's just see how I imported this. So I imported it from file upload from /file upload, but I want to change it to /components. I think that just looks better. And I'm going to go ahead and move my React import to the top right here with the other package imports. So I always like to separate my shat.cn and my component imports with the global imports. You don't have to follow that exactly, but it's what I prefer to do. Great, so now we have this file upload component right here, and let's go ahead and let's just prepare it a bit. So inside of the initial model, inside of this empty file upload, let's go pass it some props. So endpoint for this one is going to be server image. And if you remember where I'm getting this from, you can visit core.ts from app/API upload thing in our file router, and you can see that I have server image and message file. So then depending on what I want to upload, I'm going to pass that in as the endpoint. Great, so core is inside of app folder API upload thing, if you're wondering. Okay, so I'm passing the server image inside. I'm passing the value to be field.value, and I'm passing the onChange to be field.onChange like that. So field.value and field.onChange. Great. Now let's modify our file upload to accept these props. So I'm going to write interface file upload props like that. We're going to go and accept onChange to be an arrow function, which returns a void, but inside of its props is going to have an optional URL like that. Let's give it a value of string and an endpoint possibilities of message file or server image like that. So while you're writing this, make sure that it matches this. So let's see what's the, okay, no worries about it yet. So when you're writing this endpoint message file and server image, please confirm inside of your app API uploading core.ts that it matches these objects right here. So server image and message file, it needs to match exactly those two right here. Great. Now let's assign these props in this file upload component. So I'm going to extract all of those. So on change value and endpoint like that. And let's just add the prop file upload props like that. Great. And you can see how in my initial model, all the errors are gone. And if I try something that doesn't exist, you can see that I have an error. So I can only do server image or message file. For this case, it's going to be server image because we are creating our server. Great. So now in this file upload component, let's go ahead and let's create an actual upload drop zone for this. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and let's import upload drop zone from @/lib/upload thing like this. So don't do a mistake. Don't import it from some package. We are using our upload thing lib. So this is an important thing. And below that, go ahead and import @upload thing /react/styles.css, so we get some nice styling. Great. Now right here, instead of rendering this div let's go ahead and let's render the upload drop zone, which we just imported. Let's go ahead and give it an endpoint type. You can see that this endpoint also only has options of message file and server image. So it matches our props right here. So we can safely pass the endpoint prop and it's going to work. Great. And now let's do the on client upload complete like that to be a response like that. And all I'm going to do is on change response question mark dot first in array dot file URL like this. Great. And let's go ahead and let's do on upload error to be error, type of error like that. And well, you can either we can console log this for now like this. Great. Let's go ahead now and let's actually check if this is working right here. So I have no files inside of my upload thing now, but let's see what happens if I try and add an image from Unsplash. So I'm going to click this, click on upload, and let's see if this succeeds. So let me refresh my upload thing now, and there we go. So you can see this image from Unsplash is right here. Great. So you successfully created your upload thing drop zone. What we have to do now is we have to find a way to show different render depending on whether we uploaded an image or not, because we want to see what we just uploaded. So let's go ahead and let's do that now. And as you can see, I have a small strike over this file URL. It seems like there was an update with upload thing. So there's a very simple explanation here. It says that this declaration was marked as deprecated and that we use URL instead. So well, let's go ahead and replace this with URL like this. There we go. So I'm pretty sure file URL is still going to work, but it's deprecated. So use URL to have the most up-to-date version. Great. All right, now let's go and let's actually try and find a way to render this image right here. So in order to do that, let's go all the way to the top first. Whoops. Okay. And let's go ahead and import X from Lucid React like that. And let's go ahead and let's import image from next/image like this. Great. And now let's go ahead and check if we have a value. If we have a value, that means that we are ready to render something. Great. So let's first extract the file type. So const file type is going to be value.split. So we are practically checking that URL, and we're going to go ahead and split this by a dot pop like this. And now we're going to check if there is a value, and if file type is not PDF, that means, okay, this is an image. So we can go ahead and return a div with a class name of relative h-20 and w-20. And you can already see that we no longer have that drop zone. We now have a space to render our image inside. And now let's actually use this image, which we imported from next/image. So make sure you have this import right here. And let's go ahead and give it a field property, a source to be value property, an alt to be upload like that. Whoops. And let's also give it a class name of rounded-full. And if I save this, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get an error. That is because we have to add upload thing to our list of domains for images. So let me show you this again. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to upload this Unsplash image right here. And after it's uploaded, we should get an error right here because upload thing is not configured under your images in next.config.js. So that is actually very simple to fix. So what you have to do whenever you get this error, when you add a new image, go ahead and find what host name it says. So in my case, it's uploadthing.com, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same in yours. So go ahead and go inside. I'm going to close everything and go inside of your next.config.js. Inside of this object, add images, add domains like this, open an array, and just paste in uploadthing.com. And what I recommend doing is restarting your application entirely. So npm run dev like this, and refresh your application. And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go back inside of my components file upload.tsx, and let's try this one more time. So I'm gonna go ahead and upload this file right here, and let's see what happens. And there we go. You can see that I have my uploaded image right here. And one thing that I want to do is I want to add a button to remove it. So let's go ahead and add a button. So just a normal button, native HTML button element. And let's go ahead and let's render the X which we imported from Lucid React right here. And let's go ahead and let's give this button a class name of h-4 and w-4. And let's go ahead and give this button an onClick to be an arrow function which calls the onChange and just sends an empty string. And class name for this one is going to be bg-rows-500 text-white padding 1 rounded-full. Whoops, let's not misspell rounded. So rounded-full like that. Absolute top-0 right-0 shadow-sm like this. And let's also give it a type of button like this. There we go. So now we have a nice little X button right here. So if I click, there we go, we can upload a different image, for example. Great. So you have successfully created this image upload. And now what we can go ahead is we can expand this entire thing. And I'm going to go ahead and open my console, and I'm going to write code with Antonio here, and I'm going to go ahead and click create, and there we go. You can see that I have my name. Let me just zoom in. So I have my name and my image URL, and I'm going to send both of these things on the server, on the API, and then we're going to create our first server model. Great job. So now let's go ahead and let's actually send this information to the API. So I'm going to close some stuff here, and you can close your upload thing inside. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I'm going to open a new terminal so I can start npx Prisma Studio like this. So let me just zoom out so you can see npx Prisma Studio like that. Great. And inside right now, I only have this one profile, but what I want to create now is this server, which currently says 0, and if I visit, you can see that it's actually 0. So let's go ahead and let's modify our initial model to actually call this API route. Before we can do that, let's go ahead and let's actually install a package. So I'm going to close this, and I'm just going to write npm install Axios like this. So just make sure you have that. And I'm going to start my app using npm run dev again. Great. So I will just refresh my application here, and let's go inside of our components, models, initial model right here. Great. And now let's find the onSubmit function, which currently just logs our values here. So let's go ahead and let's turn this into a try and catch block. Let's resolve the error here first. So for now, all we're going to do is log this error right here. And in the try, let's go ahead and use await Axios. And let's go ahead and let's import Axios from Axios like this. And what we are going to call is axios.post/API/servers like this, and pass in the values like this. Great. After that succeeds, we're going to do form.reset. We're going to do router, but before we can do router, we actually have to add that hook. So just above the state, add const router to be used router from next/navigation. So make sure you don't accidentally import it from next/router. So next/navigation like that. And now go ahead and call router.refresh like that, and window.location.refresh like this. Great. My apologies, not refresh, reload. There we go. Great. So let's go ahead and let's create this /API/servers route. So let's go back inside of our app folder, inside of API, and create a new folder called servers, like that. And inside, go ahead and create route.ts file like this. Great. And before we continue building inside, I'm going to create a little util which we're going to use across all of our routes and server components to check the current profile. So let's go inside of our lib folder and create a new file, current-profile.ts, like this. Inside of this lib current profile, I'm going to import out from clerk next.js. And I'm going to import db from ./db, but I'm going to replace it to /lib like this. I'm going to export the constant current profile, which is an asynchronous function, like that. I'm going to go ahead and call user ID from out, like that. If there is no user ID, I'm going to return null for the current profile, meaning that we cannot find the current profile. And if there is a user ID, I'm going to write const profile to be await db.profile.find unique, like that, where user ID, like this, and just return the profile like that. Great. So now that we have that current profile inside of our lib folder, we can go back inside of our route, which is located inside of the app folder, API servers route. And let's go ahead now and let's import all the necessary things we need. So let's go ahead and import this current profile from /lib current profile. Let's go ahead and let's import db from /lib db, like that. Great. And let's write export const async function post, like that, which is going to take a request like that. My apologies. So not a constant, just an asynchronous function. So export asynchronous function post, like that. Let's open a try and catch block and let's resolve the error first. So I'm going to write console.log and I'm going to write servers post, like this, error. So I'm logging this just so it's easier for my development to know if something went wrong and that I have this indicator telling me, okay, I know what file this is now and this is where I have to debug. And let's just return new next response, which you can import from next/server. And let's go ahead and pass internal error, like that, with a status of 500, like that. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's extract the name and image URL from our body. In order to do that, we are going to use await request.json and execute that like this. Great. Now let's get the current profile. So const profile is equal to await current profile, which we imported like that. Great. If there is no profile, in that case, return new next response, unauthorized, with a status of 401, like this. Great. And if there is a profile, we can go ahead and we can create our first server. But before we can do that, let's install one more package. So I'm going to go inside of my terminal. I'm going to shut down my app and I'm going to write npm install uuid, like this. Great. And let's go ahead and let's import the uuid at the top. So we're going to use import the structure v4 as uuid v4 from uuid, like this. And we also need to install the types. So let's go ahead and I'm just gonna zoom out a bit so you can see it in one line. npm install -D at types/uuid, like this. And after you install that, this error should go away. So we installed uuid and we installed a dev dependency of types/uuid. Great. And you can go ahead and run your application again and just refresh your local host here. Great. So now that we have that, I'm just also going to move the next server to the top. Let's go ahead now and let's actually create our server here. So const server is going to be await db.server.create, like that, and data is gonna be profile ID to be profile.id, which we just fetched. Name is gonna be name, so you can either write name, or you can use the shorthand operator like this. Same thing for image URL. Invite code is going to be randomly generated, so UUID v4 and just execute this and make sure it's imported like this. Great, so now we have a unique invite code for this server. And let's go ahead and let's create the initial channels. So channels, open an object, write create, open an array, and let's create the channel. So name of the channel is going to be general like that, and profile ID of the creator is going to be profile.id like that. Great. And the same way we created channels, let's also create the members. So members, create, open an array, and the first member inside is going to be profile ID, profile.id, and their role is going to be member role, which you can import from @prisma/client. So let me show you that. There we go. Make sure you have this imported. So member role from @prisma/client. This is in our Prisma schema, and use member role .admin like this. There we go. So our initial member who created this server is gonna be assigned as an admin of that server. Great. And then we can go ahead and return next response.json server like this. Great. And now let's go back inside of our initial model, which is in components models initial model right here. And let's see what happens. What I think is going to happen is we're going to successfully create our server, but we're going to get a 404 page after that. And I'm going to explain why in a second. So I'm going to upload an image from my YouTube channel right here. I'm going to name this server code with Antonio like that. And let's click create. And let's see if this is going to work. So it's refreshing, and there we go. We are at a 404 page, but let's check our Prisma Studio and let's check if our server has been created. There we go. We have a working server with invite code, profile ID. You can see how it has a member right here, and that member is a type of admin. You can see the channels. It has a channel relation, and that channel's name is general. You can see the profile relation. You can see the image URL from upload thing, the name, everything in this Prisma Studio is completely fine. And now, why are we getting this 404 error? Well, in order to explain that, we have to go inside of our app folder, inside of our setup folder page.tsx. So remember what we are doing here. We are getting the initial profile. So we are either creating it or we are getting the current user. And if we have a profile, we attempt to find the initial server that this user is in. If there is no server, we return an initial model to create one. Otherwise, we redirect to the URL of that server. So that's why we are getting a 404 error right here, because this page right here does not exist. If you check the URL, you can see it's at s/servers and the ID of that server. So our next step is to create a view which can render the current server that the user is in. So let's go ahead and let's create this page right here. So where I'm gonna go is I'm gonna close everything and I'm gonna go inside of my app folder and I'm gonna create a new organizational route called main like this. And inside I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna create a new routes organizational folder. And inside I'm gonna create another folder called servers like this. And inside I'm gonna create another folder in brackets server ID like this. And inside of that, I'm gonna add page.tsx like this. So this is our route. So main routes servers server ID. And let's go ahead and let's call this server page like that with a div server ID page like this. And let's just rename this from server page to server ID page. It doesn't matter for the functionality, but I think it's good that we are consistent. Great, so now we no longer have that error. Now let's go ahead inside of our organizational main folder right here. And besides it having this routes folder, it's also gonna have a file layout.tsx like this. So let me show you how this looks. So we have a main organizational folder, we have the routes organizational folder, and outside of that we have layout.tsx inside of that main folder. So let's go ahead and let's write main layout like that. It's going to be an asynchronous function. Let's go ahead and destructure the children, and let's give this children a type of children to be React node like this. And let's go ahead and let's create a div with a class name of h-full like that. And let's just render the children inside, and then our text should appear back on the site. Great. Now, above this children, let's create a div with a class name of hidden md flex h-full w dash open square brackets 72 pixels z dash 30 flex dash call fixed and inset dash y dash 0 like this. And let's go ahead and let's wrap our children inside of a main element like this. And let's go ahead and give this a class name of md pl dash open square brackets 72 pixels h dash full like this. Great. And now I'm gonna expand my screen, and there we go. You can see how now my content has moved a bit to the right. So make sure that when you're developing this, you zoom out enough so that you can see this being separated from this corner right here. If you zoom in, it's gonna jump into mobile mode and it's not gonna render our sidebar. So yes, this is gonna be completely responsive. I forgot to mention that. So just make sure that you're seeing a bit of a space between server ID page and this corner right here, so you know you're working in desktop mode. What we have to build now is the navigation sidebar. So I'm gonna add navigation sidebar right here. And if I save, of course, I'm gonna get an error. So let's go ahead and let's add that. So inside of our components, create a new folder called navigation like this. And inside, create a new file, navigation-sidebar.tsx like this. So I'm just gonna expand this a little bit so you can see the name. So navigation-sidebar.tsx like this. Great. Let's go ahead and let's export const navigation sidebar like this, and let's just return a div saying navigation sidebar like that. And now we can go back inside of our app folder, main layout.tsx, and we can import the navigation sidebar from add/components/navigation/navigation-sidebar like this. And if you save, the error should be gone. Just remember to expand your page a bit, and there we go. You can see that now we have this smooshed text. So this one says navigation sidebar and this one says server ID page. Great. Let's go ahead and let's go back inside of our navigation sidebar, which we just created inside of this components folder, inside of the navigation folder, and let's start slowly developing this. So this is going to be a server component. So let's make it asynchronous right here. And let's go ahead and let's fetch the current profile. So const profile is going to be await current profile from @/lib/current profile like this. If there is no profile, we're going to return redirect from next/navigation to / like this. Great. So I'm just going to separate these two like that. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's find all the servers that this user is a part of. So const service is going to be await db.server.find many like that. And I forgot to import db. So let's go ahead and let's import db from @/lib/db like that. And inside of this find many, let's write where members like this sum profile ID is equal to profile.id like that. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's start styling this sidebar. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a class name to this div right here. So class name, it's going to be space-y-4 flex-call items-center h-full text-primary w-full dark is going to be bg dash open square brackets hashtag 1e1f22 like that, and py is going to be 3 like this. Great. So now you can see how I have a nice little dark sidebar right here. Again, just expand your screen a bit if you're not seeing it, because if you collapse too much, it goes into mobile mode. Okay, now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's create a navigation action component. So in order to do that, we're going to have to install a package from chatcn. So let's go ahead and let's find our tooltip component. So let's find it right here. It's tooltip, so it's all the way down. And we have to run this command right here to add it. So I'm going to copy it for npm like that. I'm going to shut down my app, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shut down this as well. So npx chatcn UI at latest add tooltip like that, and just press enter and confirm this installation. And while we are here, let's also find the separator. So go ahead, and below the select, I have the separator right here, and we're going to add it as well because we need it. So this command right here, npx chatcn-ui at latest add a separator, and press enter and confirm the installation of these components. After that, you can go ahead and npm run dev your application. I'm going to refresh this right here, and I'm just going to collapse it a bit so it's still, make sure always that the navigation is visible, because that's what we are working with now. Great. And now, so remove this navigation sidebar text and add the navigation action component, which right now does not exist, and we're going to get an error. So let's go inside of this navigation folder inside of components and find a new file, navigation-action.tsx, like this. Mark it as use client like that, and let's go and export const navigation action like that, and let's go ahead and return a div saying action. Let's go back to our navigation sidebar in the same folder, and let's import navigation action from /navigation action. And I'm going to separate this even more because it's a relative import here. There we go. Now it says action in this sidebar. Now let's go back and let's start styling it a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a button inside of this div. I'm going to go ahead and create a div inside with a class name of flex mx-3 h dash open square brackets 48 pixels like that, w dash 48 pixels like that, rounded dash 24 pixels, so half of this width, and let's go and give it group dash hover like this to be rounded dash open square brackets 16 pixels like this, transition dash all, overflow dash hidden, items dash center like this. We're also going to need to add justify dash center, bg dash background, dark bg dash neutral dash 700, group dash hover bg dash emerald dash 500 like this. Great. And inside of this div, we're going to add a plus from Lucid React. So make sure you import this. And let's go ahead and let's give that a class name as well of group dash hover text dash white transition and text dash emerald dash 500 like this. And let's give it a size of 50 like that. There we go. Sorry, not 50, 25 like this. There we go. So now you have a nice little plus icon, but when we hover, nothing is happening. So we have to go back inside of this button right here, and let's give it a class name of group. And now when you try and hover, you can see that we have this nice little effect right here. Great. Alongside group, we're also going to add a flex and items dash center inside. Great job. Now let's go ahead and let's create our action tooltip component. So we're going to use that when we hover, it's going to explain what this action does. So let's go inside of our components and create a new file, action-tooltip.tsx. So this one right here. Great. Let's mark this as use client like that. Let's import everything we need from the tooltip. Well, actually, we cannot import any. Oh, we added the tooltip. My apologies. So import tooltip, tooltip content, tooltip provider, and tooltip trigger from /components/action tooltip. My apologies. UI/tooltip like this. Great. So tooltip content, provider, and trigger from components UI tooltip like that. Great. Let's create an interface action tooltip like that. So action tooltip props. Label is going to be a string. Children are going to be react.react node like this. Side is going to be optional, and the values are going to be top, start, bottom, and left. And instead of start, we're going to write right. My apologies. And the align is also going to be optional with props start, center, and end like this. Great. And let me just replace this commas with semicolons. And now let's actually build this component. So export const action tooltip like this. Let's go ahead and let's destruct label, children, side, and align. Let's map them to this props. So action tooltip props like that. And let's go ahead and return this. And let's return a tooltip provider, which we imported. Let's add the tooltip. Let's give it a delay duration of 50. And let's give it a tooltip trigger like this. We're just going to render our children. And let's give this tooltip trigger a prop as child like this. And inside, just below the tooltip trigger, let's add the tooltip content like this. Let's give it a side prop, which matches to our side prop, and the same thing with align. So it's not going to be a string, but our align prop like that. And inside, we're going to render a paragraph, which is going to write the label dot to lowercase like this. And then we can give this paragraph a class name of font-semi-bold, text-sm, and capitalize like this. Great. So now let's go back to our navigation action component inside of this navigation folder inside of components. And let's go ahead and let's import action tooltip from /action tooltip, or I'm going to replace it to components action tooltip like this. And let's go ahead and let's wrap this button around with action tooltip. So action tooltip like this. All we have to do is wrap the button like this and indent it. And let's go ahead and let's pass in the necessary props. So side is going to be right, align is going to be center, and label is going to be add a server like this. And save this file. And now when you hover, you have a beautiful tooltip. So let me just expand this a little bit and let me zoom in. So when you hover, you have a beautiful add a server tooltip. So that's exactly what we wanted to develop. Great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and so obviously this button is going to trigger a model which is going to enable us to create more servers. But before we do all that, let's actually start rendering our active servers that we are a part of. So I'm going to close everything so it's easier for us. Let's go back to components, navigation, to navigation sidebar component. And after navigation action, let's add a separator, which we added. So make sure you don't accidentally import it from Radix. Make sure you import it from /UI/separator. So let me show you how your import is supposed to look. It's supposed to look like this, but I'm going to change it to add/components /UI separator, and I'm going to move it to the top right here. Now let's modify this separator a bit by giving it a class name. And the class name is going to be h-2 pixels, like that, bg sync 300, dark, bg sync 700, rounded -md, like this, w-10, and mx-auto, like this. So these are the classes for our separator. Great, so you can see how now it looks a little bit better. Great. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add another component from ChatCN called scroll area. So let's go ahead and expand this, and let's find our scroll area right here. Let's find the CLI installation. So npx ChatCN latest scroll area. I'm going to go inside of my terminal and I'm going to paste that here. Let me just expand this so you can see it in one line. So npx ChatCN UI at latest add scroll area, and let's press enter and let's confirm this installation. Now let's go ahead and run our application again. I'm just going to expand my screen so my sidebar is visible, and I'm going to refresh my local host. Great. Below the separator, add a scroll area and import it from /UI/scroll area, like this. And let me show you this import. So I'm just going to replace it to /components/UI, and I'm going to move it right here. So this is how it's supposed to look in one line. Scroll area from /components UI scroll area. Great. Let me just change this back so it's visible. And inside of this scroll area, well, before we put anything inside, let's just give it a class name of flex-1 and w-full. Great. And what we're going to do inside is we're going to render these servers that the user is a part of. So let's go ahead and let's run servers.map server. And let's go ahead and for now, let's just do a div. Let's give it a key of server.id. So we fix that error. And let's go ahead and let's just render server.name inside. And there we go. Now it says code with Antonio for me here because I am in that server. Great. Now instead of rendering that, we're actually going to render navigation item, which is going to render our server. Great. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So I'm going to replace this server name with navigation item, like that. And if we save, we are going to get an error. Before we fix this error, let's go back to this div and just give it a class name of margin bottom 4, like this. Let's go back inside of our components, find the navigation folder and create a new file, navigation-item.tsx, like this. Great. Let's go inside. Let's mark this as use client, like that. Let's import image from next/image, like this. Let's import use params and use router from next/navigation. Let's import cn from @/libutils, and let's import the action tooltip, which we created from /action tooltip, but I'm going to replace it to /components action tooltip. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's create an interface. So interface, navigation item props are going to be ID, which is a string, image URL, which is a string, and name, which is a string, like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's write export const navigation item. Let's extract all of those. So ID, image URL, and name, like this. And let me just confirm. Okay, make sure this is marked as use client. I just wanted to confirm that. And let's map this props to navigation item props, like that. And let's go ahead and let's return a div saying server, like this. Let's go back to our navigation sidebar where we render the navigation item, and let's import it. So navigation item from /navigation item, and we can leave it like this just below the navigation action. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's actually give it the props it needs. So I'm going to go ahead and give it an ID of server.id. I'm going to give it a name of server.name, and I'm going to give it an image URL of server.image URL, like this. There we go. So I can see a small text saying server right here. So let's go back inside of this navigation item, and we're going to go ahead and start by wrapping this entire thing into a tooltip. So action tooltip like this. And let's just add back this div saying server. And let's go ahead and let's give it a side of right. Let's give it an align of center, and let's give it a label of the server name like this. So when you hover, it says code with Antonio. So that's the server that we are going to click on. Great. Let's replace this div with a native button element like this. And let's go ahead and let's give it an onClick of an empty arrow function for now, and a class name of group relative flex items dash center like this. And inside we're going to replace this with a div, and this div is going to have a class name, which is not going to be a string but a dynamic class using cn, which we imported right here from libutils. So let's go ahead and open this function. In the first parameter, I'm going to give it an absolute left dash 0 bg dash primary rounded dash r dash full transition dash all and w dash 4 pixels like this. Then I'm gonna go ahead and add the parameters. So go ahead and add const params from use params, which we have imported right here alongside use router from next/navigation. So below that we can also add the router like that. And now let's add changes to this div depending on if the server ID is clicked on or not. So if params $server ID is not equal to ID, in that case group-hover will change the height to 20 pixels. Otherwise, so let me just expand this just a little bit so you can see it in one line. Okay. Params $server ID is equal to ID. In that case, we're going to do height 36 pixels like that. And this is not going to be an and-then sign. My apologies. This should be a question mark like this. So if we are on server, we're going to have this height. Otherwise, height is going to be 8 pixels like this. All right, so let's see what we've done. So I'm going to write server back in here. And let me just expand this and zoom back in. And there we go. You can see that now I'm having this little white bar, which doesn't make too much sense now, but it's going to make once we add some more things here. Okay. And also, you can remove this server inside, and this div is going to be a self-closing div. So you can just do this like that. There we go. Great. Now below that, let's go ahead and create a new div, also with the dynamic class name using cn. Let's give it some default classes. So relative, group, flex, mx-3, h-48 pixels like that, w-48 pixels, rounded dash 24 pixels, group dash hover, rounded dash 16 pixels like this, transition dash all, and overflow dash hidden like this. Now let's write some dynamic classes. So params $server ID is equal to ID. In that case, bg-primary /10 text-primary and a rounded dash 16 pixels like this. Great. And inside we're gonna render an image from next/image. So make sure you have that imported right here. Image from next/image. We're gonna add the fill prop. The source is gonna be image URL from our props, and alt is gonna be channel like this. So let me just expand this, and there we go. You can see that I have my code with Antonio server right here. Great. And you can't really see right now, but when we add more servers, you're gonna see some nice animations with this little white bar here, and it's gonna expand like this button here when we hover over inactive servers. Great job. So you finished that. And now let's just add an onClick function here. So const on click. Whoops, let's do a proper arrow function to be router.push add backticks /servers/id like this. And let's add this on click to this empty arrow function like this. So when we click on one of these icons in the sidebar, we're going to load that specific server. We are already in here, so nothing is happening. Great. So we are done with the navigation item. Let's go back to navigation sidebar. What we have to add next is our user button and our mode toggle. So outside of this scroll area, go ahead and create a new div. Go ahead and give it a class name of padding bottom 3, margin top auto, flex, items dash center like this, flex dash call, and gap dash y dash 4. Let's render the mode toggle. We already have that. We invented that when we added dark and light mode. So you can import that from /mode toggle. So let me show you. There we go, /mode toggle. I'm gonna change it to /components mode toggle, and I'm gonna move it along with my other components. Great, so we have the mode toggle, and below that add the user button from add clerk /next.js. So just like this, user button, and I'm gonna move this import with all the other global imports like this. And let's go ahead and let's add after sign out URL to be / like this, and let's change the appearance elements avatar box to be h-48 pixels and w-48 pixels as well, so it matches the size of our other servers. There we go. So now we can change the mode from here as well. Great. And you can also click on this icon to log out. And if we didn't have this appearance prop, you can see that it would look much smaller. So this way it just fits our content inside. And make sure you refresh this before you try to log out because of this after sign out URL. Great. So what we have to do next is when we click on add a server, we have to open a similar model like that initial model to actually create a new server. Let's go ahead and let's create this action that when we click on this button to add a server, a model opens up and we can do the action we did a bit before this. Before we head there, I just want to do one click modification for this light and dark mode toggle. So I don't like that this has such a dark background as opposed to this sidebar right here. So let's go inside of the mode toggle button, which is inside of our components mode toggle right here. And in this button right here, I just want to give it a class name of bg-transparent like this and border-0 like that. And now if you go ahead and look how it looks, there we go. It seems to be much more blended in and it's not that noticeable. See, there isn't like a visible color around it except when we hover, which is completely fine. We want that indicator. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's install a package called toStand so we can work with our models. So npm install toStand right here. And once this is done, I want to go ahead and I want to add actually, we already have the dialog because we have a model. So you can just go ahead and run the application. And what we're going to do now is we're going to create our model store. So let's go ahead and close everything here. And let's go and create a new folder. Oops. A new folder outside of our components, outside of our app. So just a complete new folder called hooks like this. And inside of the hooks, let's go ahead and create a new file use-model-store.ts like this. So we're going to use this hook to control all models in our application. So let's go ahead and import create from toStand like this. And let's go ahead and let's export type model type. And in here, we're going to hold all possibilities of our models. And the first one is going to be create server like this. So later, we're going to expand this with types like edit server, create channel and stuff like that. But no need to add that now. I just want to show you an example of how that's going to look. For now, it's going to be just this. Great. Now let's create an interface. model store like that. We're gonna have a type, which is model type or null like this. We're also gonna have is open, which is a boolean. We're gonna have on open, which is gonna be a function which accepts the type. So we direct what type of model we want to open like that, and just return a void like this. And I made a typo, so it's model type, not model. There we go. And we're also gonna have on close, which is just a void function like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's export const, use model, create model store for the typings. Go ahead and open this function. Go ahead and open another function. And let's just go ahead and immediately return an object. And let's add all of these types from the store. So type by default is going to be null. Is open is going to be false. On open is going to accept a type. And it's going to call set. It's going to change the is open to true. And it's going to set the type of the opened model. And we're going to have on close, which is going to call set. It's going to return the type to null. And it's going to call is open to be false like this. Great. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's create our create server model. So I'm going to go ahead inside of my components, inside of models right here, and you can copy and paste this initial model and just rename it to create server model like this. Great. So let's go ahead and let's change the name of initial model. Just make sure that you are inside of create server model file. And let's change this to create server model like that. We are no longer going to need this is mounted thing, so you can remove that. You can remove this use effect, and you can remove this if is mounted return null like that. And you can also remove this React import. We're not going to need that because we're going to handle that in a model provider. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's see what we have to change from this on submit function. So inside, we no longer need this window.location.reload, so we can remove that like this. And everything else can actually stay the same, except this hard-coded open. So for that, we're going to need to add our use model hook. So let's go ahead and let's go above the router and add const, and let's the structure is open on close and type from use model from @/hooks/use model store. So it's this import which we just created here, and let's see how that looks. So there we go, export const use model right here. Great. So from here we destructured is open, on close and type. So first let's create a constant which is going to watch whether this specific model is opened or not. So const is model open is gonna be is open, and if type is equal to create server like this. Great. And now let's replace this hard-coded open in the dialog with this is model open like that. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's create a custom onClose function here. So const handle close is going to be an arrow function, which is going to reset the form. And it's going to call onClose from this destructured props from the use model hook. Great. And now we can go ahead and add this to on open change to be, on open change to be this newly created hook handle close like this. Great. Now let's go ahead and let's create our model provider. So I'm going to close everything here. I'm going inside of my components, inside of my providers, and I'm going to create a new file, model-provider.tsx like this. Let's mark this as use client, and let's import create server model from /models create server model, but I'm going to change it to /components. There we go. So let me just expand my screen. There we go. So in one line, create server model from /components/models create server model, aka this component right here. Great. And in here, let's go ahead and let's export const model provider like this, and all it's going to do is return a fragment, and inside of this fragment we're going to render all of our models. For now we just have this one. We also have the initial model, but that one is handled in a very specific way. It's rendered directly, so that's why we don't connect it to toStand and all the hooks. It can work independently, but all the other models in our application are going to be controlled by some on clicks, by some use effects and stuff like that. That's why we are separating them like this. Great. And since I removed the is mounted from this create server model, because I said we're gonna handle that somewhere else, this is where I meant. So let's go ahead and let's write const is mounted, set is mounted, use state from React, default value is false, use effect like this, empty dependency array, set is mounted to true like this. And if we are not mounted, return null. So what this is doing is preventing the models to be rendered on the server side, because that can create inconsistencies, thus creating hydration errors. And keep in mind, whenever I write use client, that doesn't mean that this component is not rendered on the server. So this is still server-side rendering, right? So don't get that confused. All this means is that it's not a React server component. So there's a difference. Both React server components and our use client components are in server-side rendering, but use client also means that it's also rendered on the client. And that's what causes hydration errors, if there is one state while it's being rendered on the server and another state when it's being rendered on the client. So models are problematic with that, because they can be opened by use effects, they can be opened by some renders, they can be opened by on clicks. So that's why we say, okay, if we are doing the server-side rendering, we are not gonna show any models at all, because, well, they're not needed to be server-side rendered. It's completely fine for them to be on the client only. Great. And I'm just gonna separate these two. And now what we have to do is we have to add this model provider inside of our root layout. So let's go inside of our app folder, find the root layout right here. And inside of this theme provider above the children, add model provider from add/components/provider/model-provider. So just like this, and let's keep these providers together. So I'm also going to separate this too. There we go. So we have the theme provider and our model provider here. Great. And now let's go ahead and let me just expand my screen so we can see the sidebar